Welcome, gents. Ever felt like someone had a problem with you, but they never said it out loud? Like their smile didn't match the way they looked at you? Here's the thing. When you carry yourself with quiet strength, when you don't follow the usual script, people notice, and not everyone likes what they see. Some feel uncomfortable, others feel exposed. It's not about you doing something wrong. It's about who you are being a mirror for what they are pretending to be. Sigma males don't chase attention, but they get it. They don't talk just to be heard, but their words stick. You're probably not loud, but when you speak, people listen. That kind of presence doesn't sit well with those who rely on performance or group approval to feel important. The world is full of people who live for likes, applause, and fitting in. You're living proof that none of that is needed to feel powerful. You move on instinct. You trust your gut. You call out patterns, not for attention, but because you see them. That level of independence and awareness feels like a threat to people who don't have it. But here's the truth. If they secretly hate you, let them. It just means your energy is shaking something inside them they've been avoiding. And that's not your problem. You don't need to tone yourself down. You just need to keep moving forward. Let's get started, gents. Number one, you've mastered the art of psychological invisibility. There's a rare kind of person who can be right there in the room, yet somehow feel completely out of reach. Not because they're distant or rude, but because they know exactly when to show up and exactly when to fade into the background. That's psychological invisibility. And Sigma males wear it like second skin. You don't force yourself into conversations. You don't fight for attention. You observe, you calculate. You know how to read people without letting them read you. And that quiet presence, it makes people nervous because they can't figure out what you're thinking or what you're about to do. They hate not being able to place you in a category. Let's be real. Most people rely on reactions. They test your limits. They poke to see if you'll crack. But when you don't respond the way they expect, it throws them off. You might be right there, nodding politely, but your mind is already 3 steps ahead. And when someone realizes they can't reach you emotionally, when they feel like their words just bounce off and never land, it's like standing in front of a wall with no echo. That silence eats them up. Take an everyday example. A coworker throws a passive comment expecting you to react. You don't. You keep sipping your coffee and move on. That might seem like nothing, but to them it's frustrating. They can't pull you into their emotional world, so they feel powerless. And people hate feeling powerless. It's not about being cold. It's about protecting your peace. You've trained yourself to blend when blending is smart and detach when emotions are being weaponized. Most people don't know how to do that. So instead of learning from you, they start quietly resenting you. But here's the twist. What they hate is also what they secretly wish they had. You're not unreachable because you don't care. You're unreachable because you've learned the value of not being easy to reach. And that is a skill most will never master. Number 2, you don't give them the emotional feedback they need. Most people move through life fishing for small signs that they matter. A smile here, a quick laugh there. Even a simple, "You're right," can feed their sense of worth. It's how they measure if they're liked, respected, or seen. But when they interact with you, something feels off to them. Because you don't give away those cues so easily. You listen, you observe, but you don't perform. And that throws people off more than they want to admit. Take a normal conversation. Someone tells a story expecting you to laugh or react. Maybe they throw in a joke or an exaggerated detail just to get a rise out of you. But you stay calm. Maybe you give a slight nod, maybe nothing at all. Suddenly they're not just wondering if the story was funny. They're wondering if they are. Or picture a work setting. Someone pitches an idea with a certain tone, looking around for approval. Most people would offer quick praise just to keep things light. But you stay neutral, not rude, not cold, just not performing. Now they're spiraling. They start thinking, did I say something wrong? Does he think I'm stupid? Why isn't he reacting like everyone else? What's happening is simple. You're not giving them that emotional sugar rush they've gotten used to. And the absence of it feels like rejection, even when it's not. They begin to resent your calm. They take your stillness personally. They confuse your silence with judgment. You've trained yourself not to throw out reactions just to keep the peace. You value authenticity over comfort. If you're impressed, you'll say it. If something's funny, you'll laugh. But you won't fake it to fill space or stroke someone's ego. And that quiet refusal to feed their emotional appetite, It drives people crazy. Because without your feedback, they have to sit with their own insecurity. And most people just aren't ready to do that. Number 3, you can't be used, and they've tried. There's a certain kind of person who's always looking for someone to use. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's subtle. It could be emotional support they don't return. It could be your time, your connections, your peace. They test your boundaries slowly, like dipping a toe in water to see how far they can go without being called out. But with you, the game ends before it even starts. You see things they think are hidden. You catch the patterns, the delays in responses, the extra charm that only shows up when they want something. You can hear it in their tone when the conversation shifts from genuine to transactional. And the moment it feels off, you don't argue or explain, you just leave. No drama, no warning, just gone. That response is what drives them crazy. They were expecting the usual routine, a little manipulation here, a guilt trip there, and maybe a favor disguised as friendship. But you don't fall into those traps. You don't play emotional accountant, keeping track of who owes who. You give freely when it's real, but the second it turns into a one-way street, you disappear. Here's what stings for them. They never got a chance to flip the switch. They couldn't mold you into the helper, the fixer, the listener who never speaks up. You were 5 steps ahead the whole time, and your quiet exit didn't just cut them off. It exposed them. It left them standing there with all their intentions showing and no one left to feed off. People don't hate you because you were rude. They hate you because you didn't give them what they came for. You didn't fall for the act. And nothing frustrates a user more than realizing the person they tried to manipulate was never fooled, not even for a second. Number 4, you're too calm for their chaos. Some people live in emotional noise. They create it. They chase it. They need it. Arguments, gossip, tension, petty competition. It gives them a sense of importance. So when they come around you, expecting to drag you into that storm and you don't budge, that silence hits harder than a slap. You don't yell back. You don't defend yourself. You don't even bother explaining what doesn't need to be explained. You just stay calm. And that calm is not what they expected. They were counting on you to react. They wanted to watch you lose it, just so they could feel like they had control over the moment. Think about it. Someone throws a passive-aggressive comment your way. Most people would snap back or over-explain to smooth things over, but you simply look at them or maybe say, okay, and move on. That response, or lack of one, makes them feel invisible. It makes their drama feel pointless. Or maybe someone tries to pick a fight in front of others, thinking they'll embarrass you. But instead of rising to the bait, you stay calm, measured, maybe even a little amused. Now the spotlight turns back on them, and everyone sees how loud and unstable they really are. Your calm is not just silence, it's a mirror. It reflects people's chaos back to them without saying a word. And for those who rely on drama to feel seen, that reflection is uncomfortable. It forces them to confront their own restlessness, their emotional mess, their need to always be in a fight with someone. You're not avoiding conflict because you're afraid of it, you're above it. And nothing makes chaotic people feel smaller than someone who refuses to entertain their nonsense. Your peace is not weakness, it's power. Quiet, steady, untouchable power. And that's exactly why they hate it. Number 5, you don't flinch when they withdraw approval. There's something about a person who doesn't panic when approval is taken away. Most people depend on those small signs that say you're accepted or you're one of us. A smile, a nod, a reply, an invite. And when those things are suddenly pulled away, people usually scramble. They second-guess themselves. They adjust their behavior just to get back in good graces. But not you. You've learned to walk through silence without shrinking. You've learned that someone's cold shoulder is just their way of trying to remind you that they think they matter more than they actually do. When people realize that pulling back doesn't affect you, it bruises their ego in a way they don't know how to hide. Think about it. A friend suddenly stops texting. A group starts excluding you. A coworker gives you the fake smile followed by long silences. These are small, passive ways people test your emotional neediness. They expect you to come running to ask what's wrong, to fix something you didn't even break. But when you don't chase, when you carry on like your peace was never tied to their presence, it hits them where it hurts. Your silence is not revenge, it's clarity. It shows you're not playing those games. And here's the real kicker. The same people who tried to control you with withdrawal start checking your stories, lurking around your space. throwing in casual mentions like they weren't just trying to make you feel unwanted. You're not cold, you're just grounded. You know your worth doesn't rise or fall with someone's reaction. You've built something solid inside that doesn't crack when people play the "let me see if they care" game. And that calm confidence, it gets under their skin. Because when they can't control you with attention, they realize they never had any real power to begin with. Number 6, you expose fake confidence without saying a word. There's a kind of confidence that doesn't need noise. It doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need anyone to clap. It just is. That's the kind of energy you carry. And the crazy part? You don't even have to open your mouth for people to feel it. You don't brag. You don't try to dominate the room. You're just solid. And that quiet certainty, it rattles people who have built their identity on performance. Think about someone who constantly talks about how successful they are. Every sentence starts with, "I did this," or "I own that." They show off clothes, cars, connections, whatever makes them look important. At first glance, some might be impressed. But the moment you step into that same space with calm eyes and no interest in playing the comparison game, their whole act starts to unravel. It's like standing next to someone screaming for attention while you're just sitting there, still and unbothered. Suddenly, all that noise they're making feels desperate. All that forced confidence feels like a costume they forgot to take off. Here's the truth no one tells them. Real confidence doesn't need to prove anything. You don't need to remind people who you are because it's already obvious. In how you carry yourself, in how little you react, in the way you handle pressure without making a scene. You might not even notice how much it affects them, but deep down they do. They feel their voice getting louder, their jokes more forced, their stories more exaggerated, because your calm presence makes their overcompensation stand out like a spotlight. You're not trying to challenge anyone, you're just existing in your own lane. But your existence becomes a mirror, and when someone is faking it, that mirror reflects the parts they'd rather hide. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. Not because you exposed them on purpose, but because your quiet truth made their loud performance feel empty. Number 7, you remember what they thought you'd forget. Most people speak without thinking long term. They throw out little comments, subtle jabs, or promises they never plan to keep. They assume you're just like everyone else, nodding, smiling, letting things go. What they don't realize is that while they're busy trying to impress or manipulate, you're watching everything. Not just their words, but their patterns, their timing, their shifts in tone, their contradictions. You don't always respond right away. You're not the type to call things out in the moment. That's what throws them off. They think you didn't catch it, but you did. You just filed it away like a mental receipt. And later, when you adjust your behavior, change your tone, or distance yourself, they start to feel confused. They wonder, what changed? The answer is simple. You saw through them a long time ago. You just didn't say it. Let's say someone keeps making sarcastic digs at you, pretending they're just jokes. You laugh once, maybe twice, but then one day you stop laughing. You stop engaging. You don't confront them. You just move different. That silence makes them nervous because suddenly they realize you weren't laughing because it was funny. You were watching. Or maybe someone promised to show up for you, swore they had your back, then flaked again and again. Most people would brush it off, but you don't. You simply note it, and when the tables turn, you don't make space for them. And that's when they panic. You remember the small things they hoped you'd forget. The little power plays, the ego slips, the fake kindness. And what scares them is that you never had to raise your voice. You just let their patterns expose themselves. That level of awareness isn't common. It makes people feel naked around you. And when someone realizes they've been clocked without knowing it, they either respect you more or quietly resent you for being sharper than they thought. Number 8, you're not available for emotional dumping. There's a difference between being there for someone and being used as a trash bin for their emotional mess. A lot of people don't know that difference. They show up in your life only when they're drained, angry, or confused. They don't want advice, they don't want truth. They just want a place to dump all that weight and walk away feeling lighter, while you're left carrying what's not yours. But with you, that doesn't work. You don't absorb everything thrown at you. You don't automatically offer sympathy just because someone's having a bad day. You listen, yes, but with boundaries. You don't make their feelings your responsibility. And that alone makes people uncomfortable. Let's say someone constantly vents to you about the same issue, a toxic relationship, a job they hate, or drama they help create. You ask a few questions, maybe offer a realistic solution, but when they realize you're not going to babysit their emotional habits or fuel the pity party, they call you cold, distant, uncaring. It's not that you lack empathy, you just don't enable cycles. You don't hand out comfort just because someone's loud about their pain. You've seen what happens when people rely on others to carry what they should be working through on their own. It becomes a pattern. And patterns like that drain the life out of strong minds. The truth is, you understand emotions deeply. You just don't let them control the room. You value clarity over chaos. And you don't feel guilty for not reacting the way someone hoped you would. That makes you different. That makes you firm. And for people who are used to being emotionally catered to, it feels like rejection. But here's the thing. It's not your job to bleed every time someone else is hurting. Sometimes the most honest thing you can give someone is a clear line. And the people who respect growth will get it, the ones who don't. They were never looking for growth in the first place, just a place to dump. Number 9, you don't need a tribe to feel powerful. Most people rely on groups to feel important. They lean on cliques, teams, social circles, and titles to shape their identity. It gives them a sense of belonging, a place to be seen, a crowd to cheer them on. But you move differently. You're not driven by group approval. You don't need a circle to feel centered. And that quiet self-sufficiency unsettles people more than you might think. In today's world, power is often shared in packs. People form alliances not because they truly connect, but because there's safety in numbers. They validate each other, cover each other, and echo each other's opinions even when they don't fully agree. It creates this illusion of strength. But when someone shows up who doesn't play into that system, someone who stands alone, speaks only when necessary, and doesn't flinch without a backup crew, it breaks the illusion. Imagine a workplace where people are always grouping up, whispering, strategizing, building alliances. Then there's you, calm, focused, uninterested in drama. You don't gossip to get ahead. You don't nod just to fit in. You're not isolating yourself. You're just not clinging to people out of fear. And that makes the ones who do feel exposed. You're living proof that peace and power can come from within, that you don't need to be constantly seen or celebrated to know your worth. And for people who depend on group approval to feel relevant, your independence feels like an attack on everything they've built their identity around. They can't control you. They can't label you. They can't threaten you with exclusion because you were never asking to be included. And that kind of freedom, it makes them uncomfortable, because deep down they wish they had it too. You're not alone because you can't connect. You're alone because you don't need to perform to feel whole, and that quiet strength, that's what makes you powerful. Number 10, you spot lies without calling them out. Most people lie more than they realize. Not always with bad intentions. Sometimes it's to look more confident, more experienced, more liked. Sometimes it's to cover insecurity or twist a story to gain sympathy, and usually they get away with it because most people are too distracted, too polite, or too trusting to notice. But not you. You catch the details others miss, the shifts in body language, the hesitation between words, the fake laugh that shows up half a second too late. You connect dots quickly. You remember what was said last week and compare it to what's being said today. And when the story doesn't line up, you don't make a scene. You just go quiet. That silence, it's what unnerves them. You don't confront, you don't embarrass, you don't need to, because your stillness says everything. The moment they realize you're not reacting like everyone else, they start to feel seen. Not in a comforting way, but in a court kind of way. Picture someone exaggerating their achievements in a group setting. Everyone is nodding, maybe clapping. You're just sitting there, eyes steady, giving nothing away. They notice. And suddenly they get defensive. They start over-explaining, throwing in details you didn't ask for. That's fear, because they can feel that you know. You don't need to call them out. The fact that you know is enough. It strips away the power behind their performance. And that's what leads to resentment. They feel exposed, even if you never say a word. What really unsettles people is that you never play the game. You never pretend to believe what you don't. You don't reward dishonesty with fake applause. You just see it, store it, and act accordingly. That quiet awareness, it's not loud, but it's heavy. It changes how people act around you, because deep down they know, once you've seen through someone, you don't look at them the same again. And nothing makes a liar more uncomfortable than being quietly understood. Number 11, You don't give people the control they crave. Some people aren't looking for connection, they're looking for control. They want influence. They want to feel in charge of how others think, feel, and move. Sometimes it's obvious, demanding behavior, guilt trips, silent treatment. Other times it's subtle, compliments with strings attached, fake concern that masks manipulation. But no matter how it shows up, it doesn't work on you. And that's exactly what makes them furious. You can't be swayed with praise. You don't crumble when someone withdraws attention. You don't jump through hoops just to keep the peace. And when someone realizes they can't steer your emotions, they don't feel powerless. They feel exposed. Let's say someone tries to make you feel guilty for not showing up to an event. They drop hints, make passive comments like everyone else made time. But you don't take the bait. You didn't come because you didn't want to. You had your reasons, and you don't feel the need to explain them. That calm refusal to be guilt-tripped makes them feel small. Or maybe someone gives you excessive praise, hoping it'll open the door for influence. They're used to compliments unlocking access. But you say thank you and move on. No special treatment. No emotional payoff. Just a firm boundary that tells them, I hear you, but I'm not for sale. What frustrates them is not just your resistance. It's how natural it is for you. You don't try to resist control. You simply don't register it as something that should affect your decision-making. You see through tactics most people fall for. And once a manipulator realizes you won't play along, their entire strategy falls apart. Your independence is not rebellion. It's clarity. It's knowing who you are and refusing to hand over the wheel to anyone else. And for people who build their sense of power on controlling others, you're a threat, not because you fight them, but because you don't need them. And that's the kind of freedom they'll never understand. Number 12. Your presence ruins their performance. Some people thrive on being the loudest in the room. They rehearse their stories, exaggerate their wins, and throw in just the right amount of charm to keep the spotlight on themselves. But then you show up. Not with noise, not with flash, just presence. And suddenly their act doesn't land the way it used to. You don't compete. You don't perform. You just exist. Calm, grounded, completely unfazed by applause or attention. But somehow, without trying, the energy starts shifting. People glance at you more than they laugh at their jokes. They notice how you listen, not just to reply, but to understand. That quiet confidence has weight, and it throws off those who are used to being the center of every scene. You've probably seen it happen. Someone walks in ready to put on a show. The stories start. The body language gets animated. The fake laugh kicks in. But it doesn't hit like they expected. Why? Because you're not reacting. You're not clapping on cue. And when you don't play along, others stop playing too. It's not that you're trying to steal attention. You just don't give it away easily. You're selective with your interest, and that alone disarms people who are used to feeding off approval. Your presence exposes the difference between real confidence and the performance of it. And that contrast becomes uncomfortable. You're a mirror without speaking. You reflect what's real and what's not. And when someone's whole identity is built on being noticed, your calm refusal to be impressed becomes a threat. You don't outshine people. You just remind them they're trying too hard. That's what ruins the performance, not because you said anything, but because you didn't have to. They can feel that they're not the main character anymore, and that feeling, that quiet shift in attention they didn't approve of, that drives them crazy. In final words, have you ever asked yourself why people feel uneasy around you, even when you've done nothing wrong? It's not because you're rude or arrogant. It's not because you're trying to be better than anyone else. It's because you don't play by the usual rules, and deep down, they know it. You move differently. You think for yourself. You don't need to be praised to feel valuable or surrounded to feel complete. That alone challenges how most people live. You remind them of what they gave up to belong, of how often they lie to themselves just to be accepted. And when someone like you walks into their life with quiet clarity, they start to feel exposed. The truth is, some people will hate you for the peace you carry. Some will feel threatened by how little you need them. Others will label you cold or distant just because you don't give them the emotional reactions they expect. But here's what you need to remember. You're not here to make others comfortable. You're here to be real. And realness will always disturb what's fake. So if they secretly hate you, let them. That's not your weight to carry. That's their discomfort revealing itself. You're not here to explain your stillness to those addicted to noise. You're not here to apologize for seeing through the act. Stay grounded, stay honest, stay sharp. Because in a world full of masks, your raw presence is rare, and that rarity will always come with resistance. You don't need to change a single thing. Just keep being exactly who you are. Because the very things they can't stand about you are the exact reasons you're unforgettable. Thank you for watching, gents, and God bless you.